It's now been more than 2 weeks since 18-year-old Nolan Wells disappeared during a trip to Horn Island, a remote barrier island located about 10 miles off the Mississippi Gulf Coast. While the friends he traveled with safely returned to the mainland, Nolan never did. His death has since sparked widespread public attention, with many people questioning exactly what happened that day. According to the accounts given by those who were with him, Nolan allegedly decided to remain on the island after taking an interest in meeting a girl. That explanation immediately raised concerns for his family and many following the case. One of the biggest questions is why Nolan would reportedly leave behind his cell phone if he intended to separate from the group. Without his phone, he would have had no reliable way to contact his family, his friends, or arrange transportation back to the mainland. For many observers, that version of events has been difficult to accept. It seems unusual that an 18-year-old would voluntarily remain on an isolated island without his phone or confirmed ride home. These unanswered questions have continued to fuel speculation as investigators work to determine what truly happened. 2 days after he was reported missing, Nolan's body was discovered on Horn Island, not far from the area where the group had reportedly spent time before leaving. The circumstances surrounding where he was found have only added to the growing mystery. The case has also drawn attention because Nolan was reportedly the only black member of the group that traveled to the island. While some have questioned whether race may have played a role, investigators have not publicly concluded that race was a factor in the incident. The discussion has nevertheless become part of the broader public conversation surrounding the case. Nolan was described as standing approximately 6 feet 1 inch tall and weighing around 180 pounds. Because of his size and athletic background, some members of the public have questioned whether his death could simply be explained as an accidental drowning, although authorities have not announced any conclusions.
Horn Island itself presents unique challenges. The island has no permanent facilities, no drinking water, no emergency services, and no lifeguards on duty. Visitors are expected to be self-sufficient, making the location inherently more dangerous in emergency situations. As the investigation continues, Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley, publicly addressed the growing online debate. In a message shared on social media, she emphasized that her family's primary goal is not speculation or division, but simply learning the truth about what happened to her son. She stated that she and her husband remain focused on finding answers and understanding the events that led to Nolan's death. Her statement reflects the family's continued frustration. Despite the passage of time and the ongoing investigation, many questions remain unanswered. Earlier in the investigation, Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter said investigators had not initially found evidence indicating foul play. That statement drew criticism from some members of the public, who believed authorities had reached conclusions too quickly before all evidence had been examined. Since then, investigators have continued gathering evidence, and the case has reportedly been presented to a grand jury for review. That process allows jurors to examine the available evidence and determine whether any criminal charges are warranted. Meanwhile, recently released GPS information, audio recordings, and differing witness accounts have continued to generate public discussion. Questions remain about Nolan's reported timeline on the island, including when he was last seen and the sequence of events leading up to his disappearance. As investigators continue reviewing evidence, Nolan Wells' family say they remain committed to one goal above all else: discovering exactly what happened on Horn Island and finally receiving the answers they have been seeking.
Data came in from Nolan Wells. Okay, you did a whole lot of damn traveling for that boat to be damn messed up. Look, at 9:56 a.m., that boat leaves to go to Horn Island. Okay, green, it's fine, ain't nothing wrong with that. Look, the boat arrives at 11:14 at Horn Island. Fine, that adds up to me, right? Then you leave at 4:31 p.m. All right, so y'all had a good little time, but I don't know if Nolan Wells was on that boat or not. Something tells me that he was on that damn boat. Look, this is where it gets real fuzzy. From 4:31 to 5:52, they done took a damn U-turn. They went somewhere and they went to Fort Bayou. Okay, well, I thought the damn boat was messed up. You were supposed to go from Horn Island back to the dock. Y'all took your asses to Fort Bayou. Why? What was there? The boat was messed up. Why would you go there? Look, then you leave Fort Bayou and you return to the original spot at 6:06 p.m. So from 4:31 to 6:06 p.m., there is fuzziness in here. That's about an hour and a half. If I'm not mistaken, about an hour and a half. Something happened to Nolan Wells in between this time right here. For them leaving that damn Horn Island to returning back to that, something happened at Fort Bayou. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Look, and then, after 6:06 p.m., you carry your ass back to Fort Bayou. Probably to check the scene out, make sure everything's clear. For whatever y'all damn did. So then, after 7:19, look, the boat was transported by car to Biloxi, Mississippi. Now, y'all got some explaining to do. what happened between 431, basically between 60 and 606? But for real, what happened between 431 and 719? What the hell happened? Yeah, I know. And then the best friend told my son, well, he not even the best friend, because the mama cleared that up and said, you know what? That ain't his childhood friend. I don't know no Tracy. Why would his mama even name him some stupid shit like that? I don't know him. Some said we ain't want to see him die. You ain't want to see him die, then what the hell, what you do to see him die? We all didn't want to see him die. Hey, you better stop talking, young man. You better stop talking, young man. And I think they paid you to talk. But now you sound like a fool. What happened?
Now we have the timeline from the boat GPS, which clearly shows that the boat returned back to water. This completely contradicts the conversation around the boat taking on water, like the mother Ashley Cole said. The questions around this case are alarming. If you watch today's press conference with the family, you can see they know something. Something came in that independent autopsy that they're not telling us, and I think I know why. They're not bringing in a grand jury unless they have a case. The question is, why haven't the boys been picked up for questioning? Why haven't their phones been confiscated so we can see all of the timeline of them having conversations? Why haven't any of them talked to the press? Why didn't any of them go out looking for Nolan, even though that boat moved around in the water after they said they left? Why hasn't the autopsy been released from the state? What are they waiting for? There's a lot of heavy unanswered questions in this case. But I think it's safe to say that we all feel the same. At almost 400 people in that live, and most of us said the same thing. Something happened, and they're hiding it.
The more information that comes out in the Nolan Wells case, the more questions I have. So let's look at this timeline. Let's talk about it. At 9:56 a.m., the boat leaves the dock. At 11:14 a.m., the boat arrives at Horn Island, and around 3 o'clock p.m., Nolan is reportedly last seen. At 4:31 p.m., GPS shows the boat leaving Horn Island without Nolan. Sometimes after leaving the island, a distress call was reportedly made claiming the boat was taking on water and needed assistance. The exact time of that call is not publicly confirmed. At 5:44 p.m., the boat returns to the original dock. 5:52 p.m., GPS shows the boat traveling into Fort Bayou, and at 6:06 p.m., the boat returns to the original dock again. At 7:19 p.m., the boat goes to the Fort Bayou boat launch. Again, around 11 o'clock p.m., the Coast Guard says it was notified that Nolan was missing. Now, here's what I'm trying to understand. If the boat had a mechanical emergency that required everyone to leave the island, when exactly did that happen? How serious was the issue? Why does the GPS show the boat continuing to travel afterward? Why the additional trips to Fort Bayou? And if Nolan was last seen around 3 o'clock p.m., why wasn't the Coast Guard notified that he was missing until around 11 o'clock p.m.? Listen, I'm not saying this timeline proves anyone committed a crime. I'm saying there are questions that deserve answers. That's why the GPS data, Coast Guard records, phone records, and witness statements all need to be compared.
When I was putting together the timeline and piecing it together, there were two things that stuck out to me. One was there were several trips back and forth, and two, there is an hour and 13-minute time gap, and I'm going to talk to you about it. So first, at 9:56 a.m., the boat leaves the original dock. It arrives at Horn Island at 11:14. So at around 4 o'clock, there is a call to the Coast Guard about the boat. NBC News got a hold of it. Here's a quick snippet. This is the only little snippet I could find.
We're sinking. Can y'all please come?
And is everybody on board in good health otherwise?
Yeah, everybody's on board.
Everybody's on board. So does that mean Nolan is on there? Who was on that boat? At 4:31, the boat leaves Horn Island and it is towed approximately 3 miles, and then the tow ends. So after 3 miles, they go back to the original dock, okay? They arrive at 5:44 p.m. So it looks like this is where Horn Island is, and this is where the original dock is that I am referring to. I looked it up, and El Camino Real Road is in Gulf Hills, Mississippi, which is right above Ocean Springs. So I'm wondering if this is the house where they got the phone. Now, the boat travels to Fort Bayou. At 6:06, the boat returns to the original dock. Then, from the original dock, the boat goes back to Fort Bayou, and then they go to the boat launch, and it is put onto the trailer and moved by the vehicle. Now, it doesn't specify what part of Fort Bayou it goes to, but it looks like on this map right here. This is where it looks like they took the boat out. If there's any locals that know this area, please chime in, let us know your thoughts. So here's my question. Did they drop people off at the original dock, travel to Fort Bayou, pick somebody up, and go back to that original dock? And then from there, why was there an hour and 13-minute time gap? This boat was sinking hours before, and then they're just having it docked for an hour and 13 minutes. You would think they'd want to get that boat out of the water ASAP.
As the investigation continues, Nolan Wells' family says they are still searching for one thing above all else: answers. More than 2 weeks after Nolan's body was found on Horn Island, his mother has publicly stated that she still does not know exactly what happened to her son that day. Despite the release of new GPS data, audio recordings, and continued investigative efforts, many key questions remain unanswered. Authorities have not yet provided a complete public explanation of the events leading up to Nolan's disappearance and death, leaving both his family and the public waiting for further developments. As additional evidence is reviewed, investigators and the grand jury will continue examining the facts to determine whether any new findings emerge. What are your thoughts on the case so far? Do you think the newly released information answers important questions, or do you believe there are still significant gaps in the timeline? Share your opinions respectfully in the comments below, and remember that the investigation is still ongoing.